Ciao, I'm Franca with Cigar Sense. Again, here is another clip from one of our panel meetings. This time we talk about what if consumers, our members, don't agree with the descriptors that we use? And if that happens, what do we do about it? In the video, we provide a statistical overview of what panel data represents versus what consumer data represents. I hope you find this interesting, and if you do, please let us know by liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Thank you. Okay, so this was Alban's question. Okay, he asked at a previous meeting, so do consumers find the same that we find in the panel? So from a statistical point of view, to start with, there's a difference. The sensory panel data represents the cigar population. And you might say, well, that's not very humble what you're saying, right? But in fact, statistically, it is that. Statistically, as we test more samples, and I mean now 10 samples, at least 10 samples, then we can start to say the profile we establish represents the cigar population for the cigar XYZ, of course. So that's the basis for us to be able to say when a consumer smokes another sample of that cigar that we analyzed, it is extremely likely that the consumer will find the same sensory descriptors that we have in our analysis. So we focus with our panel on the product measurement. Consumer data does not focus on the product measurement. Consumer data, and that's actually the difference also, that it's a nice, how can I say, it's a nice connection when you think about it, with the difference between big data and deep, small data sets like Cigar Sense uses. Cigar Sense is not big data, right? You know that. Big data provides a correlation among everything. So there's no real product representation, there's no authentic consumer representation. You have to have millions of data points to find correlations that could start to make some sense. As an example, one big data approach is the one that says, buy this because people who bought that other cigar also like this one. You recognize that one, right? Well, Amazon, Netflix, you know, the same. Smaller data tends to look more into causality. You will like this because you gave us this detailed feedback about what you, not your father, not your brother, you like and dislike in cigars. So consumer data does not represent the cigar population, but it represents the population of consumers. Panelists are not representing the consumers. They are actually the lab population. One important thing to mention is that in spite of the fact that we may not sound humble when we make this big distinction between sensory panel data and consumer data, here we're not talking about experts versus non-experts, okay? Of course, to me, you are experts, okay? But in the cosmic scene, there are some consumers who actually know more than we do about cigars. You agree with this? And so I don't believe in the segmentations of consumers based on you smoke this cigar, therefore you are a beginner, you know, this type of things. Here we're just simply talking about process. We're just following different processes and we obtain data following different processes. Also, sensory panelists, develop atypical skills. And in the last row of the table, you see that they're not even recommended to do a hedonic test. So the test where you are just asked to say, do I like the cigar or not? That is hedonic. That is your judgment, your personal judgment about the cigar. You understand this, but, and this is, and why it is? Why are you not fit for me to ask you these questions? In theory, because it is a tradition in the food and beverage industry to actually use employees to do tests. And often what happens is employees want to please the boss. So what happens is they're biased. It's something similar to what we have seen during the past meeting as leniency bias. This is what happens in our industry. Leniency bias is you don't want, in this case, it's not the employer that you want to please, but it is the sponsor or, you know, or in any case, somebody else. You want to please somebody. And so you just say, yes, I liked it. I loved it, just for that. And so, you know, the data can be biased. What else can we say based on this table? So we also need to take into account that as with the training, we are more aligned with the team. And I can see that from the data. I almost never eliminate outliers from your analysis input. Statistics are there to control, to verify, not to eliminate data, unless you really have to. But the picture we are providing include all the different representations of all of us, being analysts, being trained analysts. So this obviously gives less chance to find some flavors that we do not display in the charts on one hand. What happened when, so I did go through, we probably have almost 15,000 feedback items, like tasting notes, you know, detailed feedbacks, and going through them, I regularly do it so I catch up. Actually, I never found a lot of consumers who were saying, oh no, I found something totally different in the cigar. So clearly, at least not in the feedback that they provide to us. I think the number of samples that we test is relatively good. The other thing that we need to consider is that members normally join Cigar Sense to learn how to describe what they sense in a cigar, to understand more of their tastes. So that's also another reason for which probably the ones who believe I know it all and I don't need you are not our members, right? They're not the people who are open-minded and open to, you know, listen to what we say, compare, and say, oh yeah, okay, that was it. And yeah, what we do have is they identify a little bit too much of this or too little of that. And in certain cases, I just offered to have, you know, a one-on-one conversation to guide them to modify their profile. It can happen too. So that was to answer the question, do consumers align with the panel data, and when they don't, what do we do? Do you think I answered the question?
Yes, you did.
Okay, do you have any comments or further questions?
No, I mean that you were right when you say something like perhaps it's the opposite process, that consumers are aligned to what panelists find.
All righty. Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciated you being here. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Have a nice weekend.
You too. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.